Hi, welcome to this week's midweek devotional. I want to talk to you a little bit today from the book of Philippians, which I've been studying lately. It's my goal to read through the book of Philippians every day in the month of October. So far, so good. And today, something was jumping off the pages at me, found in Philippians chapter 1. And Paul writing to the Philippians about how he, being in prison, he's writing the book of Philippians from prison, and how his being in prison has turned out for the good, for the furtherance of the gospel. And what jumps off the page to me here is Paul's goal, his strategy through his missionary activity is to reach the big cities of the Roman Empire. It seems like throughout the book of Acts that he's going to one big city after another, because going to these population centers and delivering the gospel there and establishing a foothold of the gospel in these big cities creates a ripple effect throughout the countryside of the Roman Empire. And by reaching the cities, he's reaching the areas around the cities too. And with that strategy in mind, the ultimate goal would be for him to get to Rome itself, the biggest and most important city of the empire, the capital and the center of the empire where all roads lead. And establishing a foothold of the gospel there would create a ripple effect throughout the entire empire. And it's a goal that makes sense in a lot of ways. And it was his goal to go there in much the same way he went to the smaller cities throughout Macedonia and Greece, by being an open air preacher, by going to people and witnessing to them one on one and establishing churches there. Well, Paul does make it to Rome, but not in the way he wants. He makes it to Rome in chains. He is arrested in Jerusalem. If you've read the book of Acts, you know parts of the story. He's arrested in Jerusalem, put on trial. He keeps appealing, and being a Roman citizen, he can appeal all the way up to the emperor himself. And as a result, Paul arrives in Rome as a result of that appeals process. And here's what he has to write. Philippians 1, verses 12, I'm going to go down to verse 18. Now I want you to know, brethren, that my circumstances have turned out for the greater progress of the gospel, so that in my imprisonment, in the cause of Christ, has become well known throughout the whole Praetorian Guard to everyone else, and that most of the brethren, trusting in the Lord because of my imprisonment, have far more courage to speak the word of God without fear. Some, to be sure, are preaching Christ even from envy and strife, but some also from goodwill. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I am appointed for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaimed Christ out of selfish ambition rather than from pure motives, thinking to cause me distress in my imprisonment. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in this I rejoice. Yes, and I will rejoice. So he arrives in Rome in chains. Not the way he planned, for sure, but certainly a reason for him to rejoice, because in his imprisonment, Christ is being proclaimed. He gets to preach every day to a rotation of guards coming in and out of his house at rest while he awaits trial. They're called the Praetorian Guard, the most important soldiers in the Roman Empire, because they're responsible for the safety of the empire, the emperor. So, in preaching to these Praetorian guards, he's getting the gospel into the household of the Roman emperor himself. And also, there are other Christians in Rome who take courage from Paul's circumstances and say, hey, if he can preach the gospel there, then we can certainly preach the gospel here. And even there are some in Rome who seem to not like Paul. They seem jealous or envious of Paul. He's a famous preacher, has made a big name for himself throughout the eastern part of the empire. And now they preach the gospel from envy. It says, Let's see. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I am appointed for the defense of the gospel, but the former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition rather than from pure motives. So now these Christians, they see one of the most famous preachers, an apostle of Jesus Christ, come right to their doorstep, preaching Christ in their city. And that causes jealousy, and maybe that compels them to be even more bold in their preaching of the gospel because they don't want to be overshadowed by Paul. They're preaching the gospel out of envy and ambition. Paul says, what do I care? As long as the gospel is being preached. So there we go. Well, where are you in your life? Have you arrived there through your own plans, or have you arrived there through God's plans, which are totally different from yours? Have there been people who have given you grief in your life? And how can you use that for the furtherance of the gospel and God's plans? Questions for us to ponder as we read through Philippians chapter 1. Thanks for joining me today.